think this is the time where no one is exempt when it comes to AI implementation, the future, any of our jobs. We really have to get with the program and get in the game.
Welcome to Direct Approach, a bi-weekly podcast hosted by Wayne Moorhead, filled with timely insights, fresh perspectives, and actionable takeaways from your direct selling executive peers to help fuel the growth and evolution of your business. In this episode, Wayne speaks with Kathleen Ross, fractional CMO and AI strategist, about operationalizing AI, integrating performance marketing, and preparing both corporate teams and the field for a rapidly changing landscape. But before we begin, we'd like to thank this episode's sponsor, Exigo. Tired of struggling with outdated systems and inflated technical debt? Are you losing time and money on staff or software inefficiencies? Exigo can help. Our all-in-one platform as a service simplifies everything from commissions to reporting to e-commerce. With Exigo, you can finally focus on growing your business, not managing it. Don't let technical headaches hold you back. Visit exigo.com and discover how Exigo can transform your MLM company. Now let's hear from your host, Wayne Moorhead, and his guest, Kathleen Ross.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorhead, and today's guest is an award-winning marketing and creative leader with more than 15 years of experience building and scaling brands that we're all familiar with. She's a sought-after speaker and educator on AI and marketing and advises founders and executive teams as a fractional CMO. I am very excited to welcome Kathleen Ross. Kathleen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity. So excited to connect.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this. Again, your marketing background is incredible. I've heard you speak before, and I always walk away with pages of notes. And I know today will be exactly the same for me and everyone listening as well. So excited to dig in.
I love to hear it.
Well, you have had from one marketer to another a very interesting and inspiring career where you've led marketing, you've built brands in numerous verticals and channels, from every channel or positioning from luxury to retail to influencer brands and more. But can you share a little bit about the path that led you into the exciting world of direct selling?
It was kind of an interesting pivot, actually. And I think that, to your point, I didn't have the most clear trajectory in direct selling because I didn't work into direct selling and go into the industry until later in my career. So I was working in luxury publishing. I was working for one of the world's largest jewelers, working with every major US retailer. And I got the call to come and work for this really cool beauty brand. And I remember having to be a little bit convinced. And I think it's a good thing to remind people when you're trying to attract talent from outside of the industry that, you know, they may need to be sold a little bit as well. So I actually had to get that pitch directly from the president on, you know, what direct selling was really about, what it was not, you know, what stigmas I might have had from not being in the industry and why it was a good opportunity for me. And it's really interesting because I actually didn't realize that I had direct selling background until I was in that room because my mother growing up sold Pampered Chef and my parents both had done Amway, and I had even been to an Amway conference as a kid. But I didn't really grow up super in the industry, and my career hadn't been in the industry. So I did take a little bit of, you know, coursing to get into the industry and take that job. And I called one of my mentors, who happens to be my father, and said, you know, should I take this job? What's this really about? Is this a scam? Which, you know, was my real honest thoughts going through my mind. And I remember him saying, like, this is just another experience to learn about a different industry, a different way to approach things. And I'm so glad that I did, because I really ended up falling in love with it. It was completely different in so many ways, but it also allowed me to bring some of the things that I had learned in my brand building and luxury and different background into the new this new experience. And in my case, they were specifically looking for someone outside of the industry because it was just this really interesting inflection point in the market where they really wanted an ultra premium brand refresh. And they were looking for someone with my background, and it didn't have to be direct selling background. And then once I got in, now I've kind of been in and out ever since. It's something that you fall in love with. I think it attracts a certain personality once you get in, and the intensity of it and the passion that I was able to express through the channel was something that really changed my life in so many ways.
Yeah, everybody does end up falling in love with it at whatever point in life we are introduced to it. And it is interesting, as you mentioned, I think we all have much deeper connections in direct selling, even prior to our careers, than we realize, whether it's friends, whether it's neighbors, family members, whether it's the products. I grew up, our neighbor was a Shackley distributor. And so I grew up on Shackley products, not even understanding the channel. But yeah, we've all been impacted by the incredible products and innovations that have come through this channel over the years. And I think it's fascinating that you came in with more of that traditional marketing experience. And I do think at different points in a company's life cycle, you really need that outside marketing perspective. And so any CMO, in direct selling, out of direct selling, I think it's great to diversify that experience and work in a lot of different channels so you can bring all those best practices from across channels, from across methodologies, and really elevate whatever you're doing in direct selling. And to that point, though, I have found it really challenging as I've watched CMOs come in who come in at the highest level, come in at the C level, having not been in the trenches of a corporate direct selling company. I feel like they experience challenges more so than a lot of other C-level people that come in, mainly because a lot of those traditional approaches, a lot of the traditional marketing levers are very different in marketing and direct selling, and it's becoming less so. But I'm curious, as you came in, what surprised you most about marketing and direct selling, and what did you end up falling in love with the most?
You're right on the money. There's so many things that are different. I was really shocked because I was coming directly from what was an intense role that I was in the jewelry space, but a very slow business, a very planned and methodical business. Also going from, we did private label branding, so we were B2B to C, but it just was so planned out years in advance and campaigns and things like that. And then the intensity and the agility and the immediate feedback that you get from consumers when you go into the direct selling industry is unlike anything I've ever experienced. I mean, you would beg for that type of feedback in any other brand, but you're going to get it whether you like it or not immediately from your field. You get just such this two-way conversation that happens that it's really different than DTC. And then certainly a lot of the more traditional levers and certainly some areas of performance marketing, which I'm excited for us to talk about a little bit more later, are not as relevant or harder to implement in direct selling. But then the things that I really loved, event marketing, brand marketing, creativity, the ability to just change with a snap of a finger, I really loved that. And I think that really helped me grow. And when I came into the direct selling industry, the company I was with was in this exponential growth. I mean, the growth was incredible. And that certainly taught me a lot about leadership and marketing and scaling teams and in so many ways. But I think the most exciting part about everything is that gratitude that you get from the field. I've never worked for another brand or any company where you've gone to a conference and someone's come up to you and say, thank you so much for the work that you've done in corporate for you and your team. I'm so grateful for you. You've really helped change my life. And those stories are the things that I think really were the reasons that I fell in love with the channel.
Yeah, there are so many wonderful aspects to it. And I think the element or the aspect that I hear most consistently from people outside the channel, what they're most surprised by is the speed and the scale. The ability for a direct selling company to scale, it grows when you catch momentum, it's going to grow way faster, than any retail brand, than any D2C brand. And that is always surprising to people outside. And I always hear the people, the impact, as you mentioned. I also love going to events and having a distributor come up, tears in their eyes about the product, about the opportunity, and having that close of a relationship with the sales force, with the end user is so unique. And it's what I also love about direct selling as well. So I'm glad you had a very similar and wonderful and continued experience.
Yeah, it's a little addicting, once you have that experience of getting that two-way conversation and that connectivity to the people that you're serving in the work that we do. It's kind of sometimes hard to go back to something where feels like there's such a distance in direct-to-consumer brands. And I love direct-to-consumer too. I still consult with a lot of direct-to-consumer companies, and I like being in and out of the channel to keep sharp. I think that helps me kind of sharpen my axe constantly and challenges me. But there's really nothing like it. And the growth and the challenges that come with growth too. Talk about, drinking from a fire hose. I remember that was the phrase that continually was shared with me when I started in direct selling.
Yeah, I think that is the right analogy as you first move into direct selling for sure. So as such an incredible thought leader and expert, I'd love to get your perspective on the state of marketing in direct selling. As we know, the marketing landscape is changing so rapidly. I mean, every day, new platforms, new tools, channels bleeding and blending together. What worked yesterday doesn't work today. From your perspective, what do you see as fundamentally different about the marketing landscape today versus even just a few years ago?
I think marketing across the board, not just indirect selling, has certainly changed. Of course, we have AI, and we're not going to be able to get out of this conversation without talking a lot about AI, but it's really accelerated things. And then within the channel, even just the pace of change is sometimes exhausting. I think it can be challenging, truly challenging, because as these tools are becoming available and as trends are changing so much within the social media landscape, I mean, these are all things that maybe even years ago, direct selling somewhat kind of sat in its own space and was slightly different and didn't always have to look at direct-to-consumer brands as direct competition. But now that we're kind of all on the same platforms in many ways, we do have that direct competition in some ways, and not just direct selling to direct selling, but direct selling to everybody else as well, with the way that social media works. So certainly the pace. I also think that we have a big challenge that we're going to be coming up on around AI detection and AI slop. AI slop is at an all-time high. So this idea of 2 or 3 years ago, I was just preaching like, try the new AI tools, get to use them, start using them. And now it's like, no. You need to know how to use these tools so well that it doesn't sound like you're using them. So it's at a different level. I think that the pace and the speed, it can be challenging. I think it's also an opportunity because we have so many things that we excel at and as a channel, with brand and events and things like that. But I do think that it's certainly a tricky landscape right now in terms of speed, which we are great at speed. So, but it does challenge us to take what we're great at and do this through a different lens and understand that we're not really just in our own little bubble anymore.
Absolutely. It's interesting how historically, I think direct selling companies felt like we had a little bit of a free pass in certain areas because we weren't on shelf next to the competition. But now we are definitely on feed. We definitely sit next to all other brands across channels in our feeds that we have to compete in a very different way. And there are so many incredible things that we have excelled at, especially community, especially those personal relationships. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, we would admit that we've always been a little bit behind from a technology standpoint. And now technology is becoming the tip of the spear for connection, for commerce. And so we really have to evolve quickly to just catch up and then move forward, hopefully bringing those other superpowers in. But I think it's a really exciting time where this rise in social commerce plays to our strengths, plays to the superpowers that we've had for the last 100+ years. And so I'm really excited about this. And it's people like you that are going to help us get to where we need to excel today and take that leadership position. But I also know one of the other big changes, even outside of technology, is just expectations from distributors, from consumers. They have different drivers today than they did yesterday, different expectations when online or digital experiences are compared to everything else we do on phone or on computer. And can you share a little bit about how those expectations have changed and what you see as the new drivers?
Absolutely. I mean, personalization is the one that comes to mind because we used to think that personalization was as simple as just filling in someone's name. Hi, John. We think you'd like this product. But the level of personalization that brands can achieve now with AI is just incredible. So I think that consumers have certainly raised their expectations. I think consumers are a lot more aware of ingredients. There's so much information at their fingertips. So there's more of this, not just like, trust me on a baseline, trust me because I told you. There's definitely a level of research that's involved. So personalization, speed, these are things that consumers are expecting. And I think transparency is a huge thing that consumers and the field are expecting from us as companies as well in a way that they were not previously, where it was kind of just like, trust me. And now there's just, the floodgates are wide open. But the cool thing is that when it comes to personalization and speed, we have all of these access to great technology. If we can get up to speed quick enough to be able to really make great experiences for consumers, better product recommendations, completely customized communications from email to SMS, really understanding the depth of lead enrichment that can happen. So you can really understand an individual's profile that can then be leveraged in so many different ways. The technology is there. We just have to get up to speed with it. And consumers are expecting that from us now.
Yeah. Consumers and distributors are incredibly savvy and know way more, I think, than any generation before about ingredients, about comp plans, about the competition. And so talking to them at their level and making sure we're not talking over them, but we're also not talking down to them because they are so educated now, I think is one of the great opportunities as well. What do you feel leaders, CMOs are underestimating about how fast the environment is moving today?
Pace is not linear. I think there's so many times where I'm meeting with a team and they're excited and saying like, let's do something with AI and we're experimenting with tools. And that's not enough anymore. You have to be operational at this point. And it's the trend cycle and the AI cycle together. You can't, if you have all these layers and layers of checks and balances to get something up the flagpole for a trend on social media, and you don't have the ability to move quickly with these things, you're going to miss the moment. And the same thing is true with technology. If you're just, distracted by a shiny object, thinking about it, playing with it, I'll talk to you in 3 months and that's obsolete. So we really need to get comfortable and having an overarching strategy and really starting to operationalize a lot of this stuff. And we really just need to be used to constantly changing. That's the name of the game, where it's like, get ready to change and then get ready to change again is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. And we have to condition the field and the distributors to be open to change as well. Because what we do today and what's working today, as we mentioned, will not work tomorrow. There'll be new tools 3 months from now that we're implementing 6 months from now, and we'll evolve past all of those as well. One thing I'd love your perspective on as well. I was recently having a conversation with the CEO of a very large, well-known direct selling company about the different functions in marketing today. And it used to just be field focused. We spoke, with one voice to one audience. And now we have different segments, different journeys, and different needs from brands now that we do compete a little bit more directly than we did before. Where do you see brand marketing and performance marketing fitting in today's direct selling strategy?
I think this is a really exciting conversation, and it's really been interesting to look at DTC and where that's been going and versus direct selling. Now, the great news is that direct selling, when it comes to brand, I feel like this is something we excel at. We totally get community. We get the stickiness. We understand how to connect the heart of a company with consumers in our field. So I think that we create the best events when it comes to these things. We understand loyalty. I think there's so many ways that we excel and are so well positioned to continue to excel when it comes to brand. When it comes to more traditional performance marketing, though, that hasn't been as much part of our necessity everyday behavior because a lot of direct selling brands don't have to run extensive ad campaigns. A lot of the money that we spend in marketing, we want to go back to the field, and I fully support that. However, now we're in this place where we do have to compete a little bit more. And it's interesting because kind of the opposite of what I think happened in DTC was there was a huge emphasis on performance marketing to the point where a couple years after, everyone was performance marketing and ads were working so well, and then ad cost rises, and then direct to consumer brands are thinking, what do I do now? My ad costs are so high. I think I should go back to that thing where people actually connect to our brand. So they're in this position where they're trying to plug back in the brand, lever and plug back in the brand hose. And we've always had the brand hose, but we haven't always had that talent or that need or the necessity or the right technology to excel at performance marketing. So what's been happening at the DTC level that I've seen is that a lot of companies are splitting their marketing roles. So I've seen a lot of companies have chief growth officers, chief performance officers, and chief brand officers, chief marketing officers. Now, that's a pretty big C-level investment, but they're realizing that brand marketers and performance marketers sometimes come up through the ranks of marketing really differently, and we have different skills. And it's very unusual to find someone who is truly exceptional at both brand marketing and performance marketing. So I would say another way to kind of think about it and fill it is that, okay, let's say you're really strong in brand, certainly your brand head of marketing needs to come up to speed and performance, but you may need to backfill that with a VP level of someone who's really strong in growth and really strong in performance, because I've had multiple conversations with direct selling companies who are saying, okay, we need to attract the next level. We need to attract new consumers. We need to attract the next generation. How are we going to do that? We're ready to spend money and we want to start running ads. And I'm saying, okay, well, it's not just take your opportunity video and they'll ask me, how much money should I spend? Is this a good amount? Should I spend this much money every month? And I'm like, no. That's not how it works. Brand and performance need to work together. It's not just one or the other, and you can't just throw money at a brand campaign and vice versa, only focus on performance and have your digital person so far away from your brand person. You really have to create this integrated, this mix and dichotomy of how the two support each other. And we may need to bring in talent to support performance marketing because it may not be in the channel right now. Because if you grow up in the direct selling industry, this is not something that is going to be your day to day. And it's very technical and it's very competitive. And there's so many great tools. It's not necessarily hard to learn, but you do have to put the emphasis and the focus to understand how to ramp up in this space. And I think it's going to become critical because we do need to compete a little bit, especially where we're going to be going with social commerce in the future and us really all being on a similar playing field. I do think that both are very, very important, but we may need to kind of come up to speed a little bit in the performance area. I mean, that's my perspective, but I want to know what you think too.
I agree 100%. You're speaking my language. I think we definitely need to bring in new talent, develop new muscle memory around the performance side, just because it hasn't been part of our day-to-day operation. And the brand side is absolutely necessary now from an awareness, from an emotional standpoint. And I was at a big D2C brand, and we had actually split out the roles exactly that way. There was the CMO that was really kind of performance marketing focused, and then chief brand that was, I almost look at it as it's the emotional versus the transactional. It's the long-term versus the short-term or immediate results. And The interesting tension has always been around measurement and attribution, because the performance marketing can do an amazing job at showing a ROAS, an ROI. And so there's going to be a tendency to give those dollars to the performance. But if you're not also building the brand, establishing that long-term emotional connection, you're going to hit that D2C ceiling, as you were mentioning, where you realize, okay, we need to start building the brand. We need to move into retail. We need to have people experience our product in the real world. But both are necessary. But I think the big opportunity for us is to pull in that performance side where we can really, it's not competing with our brand partners or distributors. We can really work very closely with them to help their sales go up, to increase the LTV and AOV of their customers. And so I think it's really a partnership. And I think the distributors are becoming more and more open to that now, and demanding that we show up where other brands are, and demanding that we help them build their businesses as well. So I'm actually very excited.
It's really interesting you bring this up, because I remember being in-house at a direct selling company, and the field was a lot more savvy in many ways. This was a very forward field that I worked with in social, and also a lot of them were running ads, and they were doing their own performance marketing, creating their own landing pages. I mean, they were really pushing us as a brand to come up to speed in many ways. So it's always interesting. Not every direct selling company has a field like that, but I think you're right. There are a lot of really savvy distributors out there who are kind of pushing us to do better in some ways too. So it's always interesting. Sometimes that push comes from the field. I've had a few experiences with that as well.
Absolutely. So I'd love to shift into AI. And this is one of the topics I've been most excited to talk to you about. I want to know kind of where we are at in the adoption cycle. Obviously, and I think especially marketing teams are getting pressure from owners and CEOs to adopt AI more rapidly. And we use it in a lot of different ways. We're kind of experimenting with it. I think in truth, some tools aren't quite where maybe the owners or the CEOs think they are. You can't just speak everything into existence and stop having that human element. But I'm curious where you feel we're at. Where should marketing teams be at today and then tomorrow as well?
It's interesting. So we actually just ran a poll that I have the results from in our recent AI Now webinar that DSU put together. And I asked two questions. The first was specifically to direct selling executives, not just marketers, but anyone who attended this online webinar. And there was about 80% of people were already using AI in terms of their personal fluency. So the first question was, how personally fluent are you? And there was a huge group. The majority of the group, more than 50%, were in the I feel like I'm at an operational level. And then when on the flip side, I asked, how ready is your organization? Okay, so you think you're ready. And of course, we're talking to an audience who's willing to show up for an AI conference. So they're maybe a little bit more AI forward and maybe more the leaders of the company. But then when I asked when they were operational, only 20% were at an operational or strategic level. Strategic being the highest level, operational being like, sure, we've implemented stuff. We have a little bit of a plan, but maybe it's not really like a long-term strategy. And then the rest was either experimenting but don't have a plan, have some tools with no plan at all, or not using it at all. So there's definitely a little bit of a gap between perception of how individually ready we may be and where organizations are actually able to get operational. But the biggest thing I would have to say is we have to be at an operational level at this point. We're years into LLMs being widely available, and it's really we're past that point of experimenting. Certainly there's going to be the new shiny tool all the time that we have to become aware of. Right now, of course, that's OpenClaw and these super crazy autonomous agents, which in my opinion are very cool and I like to look at, but are really not at an operational level for a corporate company at this point. But you do really need to get in the game at this point. If you're still experimenting, the time is going to kind of come and go. And to your point about, are the tools really as wonderful as we say. Or you hear about on a podcast, and this is so amazing. I think there's certainly a learning curve, especially when it comes to some of these creative tools. You're not just going to get the perfect image or the perfect video right off the bat. There's a huge aspect of learning how to use these tools and do this in a quality way. But the gaps are closing fast. And that's the biggest thing, is that I don't think that we're getting up to speed as quickly as the gaps are closing. So that's kind of the challenge there, is like, we can say, sure, the tools are not really ready. The tools are not really there yet. I know a lot of people will start to use a tool and say, this isn't really that great. But there is that kind of friction point where, like, we're going to blink and the tools are going to be that great. And some of them already are, and maybe people just haven't used them again recently enough or understood how to get the best output. I think sometimes we just think, AI is supposed to be perfect. It's the magic solution. But just like you would bring in any new system or person, you have to iterate with that. You have to understand, train, iterate, go through the process to get someone up to speed. They're not going to be perfect the first time. It's kind of the same thing with AI tools. So it's really time to start implementing at this point, because some really cool stuff is happening. It's just whether or not you're going to be ready to do it.
Are you ready to revolutionize the way your direct selling company accesses industry insights? Introducing the DSN Library's Smart Search, an AI-powered tool that puts over 2,000 curated assets at your fingertips. From compensation trends to emerging markets, answers are just a click away. If you're already a DSN supporter, then you have access to Smart Search right now. If not, it's time to check out our updated program. Starting at just $1,000 per month, your entire company can get access to the channel's most comprehensive collection of education and insights available. Visit directSellingNews.com/supporter to see a demo of Smart Search in action and to learn how your company can become a supporter now. Don't forget to register for Spring DSU, April 14th to 16th at the Westin Galleria in Dallas, Texas. Join over 600 industry executives for the ultimate direct selling experience, featuring over 70 best-in-class speakers, trending topics, and the best networking in the channel. Visit dsnevents.com/spring2026 to see the full list of confirmed speakers and register for free today.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really important point, that even if a few months ago there was a certain tool, even a creative tool that you tried and maybe felt like it wasn't quite there yet, they're evolving so rapidly that even 3 months later, the level of sophistication, the level of quality, the output is truly incredible now. And so I think it's important to revisit certain things. And as you mentioned, there's always new tools coming in. But I've also heard you talk about, in order to operationalize AI and really integrate it into the marketing world and into other functions at the company, you've talked about fewer tools, more repeatable workflows. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So the tools are kind of converging, and we see this a lot in big technology shifts where it's like there's so many different tools, and then the big guys kind of go and take the little guy's tool and integrate it. So something that used to be this very specific one-off niche tool is not needed anymore because now it's available in Gemini. And I've given a lot of examples on this in our recent AI Now webinar, but I used to use this one tool that would rip transcripts from YouTube. And now Gemini can actually analyze YouTube videos. So I don't need that tool that I used to pay for to rip all my transcripts. Now I can just ask Gemini to do all that analysis for me. So there's so many examples of this. A lot of this also in the creative space, where we used to have layers of tools, where I used to say, okay, I would create an image in ChatGPT or Midjourney, and then I take it into another tool called Topaz Labs to expand and change the resolution. Now with Nano Banana, you can make 4K images. So the tools are converging, so your stack isn't going to be as large. And this is where you may have fewer tools, but you really want to look at, okay, what are the repeatable things that happen in my business, and how can I have an AI automation or an AI agent that can take on this workflow. And I always try to say, start with something that's, especially if you're just starting out, start with something that's super high volume, and low risk. We want to get to high volume, high risk at one point, but there's definitely going to need to be a level of sophistication for you and your team and the tools to get to that. So, but this busy work, that's what we want to take off people's teams. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to repeatable workflows. There are very clearly things that we do every single week as marketers, whether that be researching topics, trending topics, writing blogs, coming up with social content, that some of these pieces, at least a section of it, can be done with AI research or drafting with AI. I mean, the entire thing can be done, but you have to decide where you want your human in the loop. And I think that there's also a really huge emphasis on quality, which with AI slop rise. So, I'm a big pusher for my kind of thought process as first draft, last pass. Once you've gotten an AI system kind of really in place, you really want someone to be at that last pass. But this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying repeatable workflows. You shouldn't be doing your own research for trending topics anymore. That should be in your inbox every Monday morning, and the draft should already be there. And then you need to review it and decide whether or not it's good enough to post, is where you want to be at. And if you're not there and everyone's doing their own separate research and not in the same system and not using the same brand guide, that's where the mess is right now. So this is where you want to start to bring it into your daily workflows.
So do you feel those repeatable daily workflows, that's where the most immediate and biggest impact can happen most quickly?
I think for a lot of teams, yes, because you also want your teams to feel a win. There's a lot that we have to consider as leaders, that our teams are scared still. I mean, even the ones who are very AI savvy, I think that they may think like, okay, I'm going to create a position for myself in being the AI savvy one, but there's going to be a level of fear with your team. So I think looking at those things that are busy work, that's a great win to start with. It's a great win when you make someone's life easier. There's certainly, once you're able to get that off the table, then you can look at some higher level, higher volume, high impact things. I also think when it comes to personalization, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do as well. But I think that that's a big win. I mean, what are you seeing as well?
I'm seeing it. I think you described it really well, kind of the first pass and the last pass. So I'm seeing communication departments start, at least get a baseline of a communication or some messaging, and then going through and changing it and making sure everything is accurate, tone of voice is consistent. I'm also seeing a lot of great use from creative teams. It is pretty incredible, I think, what can be produced now. And back to even 3 months ago or 6 months ago, it's very different today. But I'm seeing more and more creative teams adopt it as part of their everyday workflow, and they can hand off certain things like storyboards and initial scripting and outlines and image generation. And then also moving in on the digital and performance side, great AI tools and analytics from gathering insights and then connecting those back to meaningful brand and marketing touch points. It is pretty incredible. So we are experimenting, but I am seeing a decent percentage of adoption as part of their daily activity and really striving to pull it in. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. And you brought up another really interesting point about keeping the human in the loop. And I've heard you talk about how AI doesn't necessarily replace taste or judgment or leadership. So can you talk a little bit about what becomes more, not less important for marketing leaders in this AI-enabled world?
It's a really interesting time right now because this AI slop rise, I read a statistic that AI slop, that term is up over 200% year over year or something like this. Consumers are starting to get savvy. So again, when it was just use all the tools, now it's more than that. It's use the tools without sounding like you're using the tools, or even communicate better than AI, because there's this kind of level of sameness. So this gives us a huge challenge as marketers, because the stakes we rose the stakes. They're much higher now. So I think that it was really interesting when AI first came on the scene. A lot of the agency colleagues of mine, they cut all their copywriters. That was the people they cut, director of communications. And I remember thinking, like, I don't think this is a good idea. Certainly, like, those, if people are not willing to use AI, that's a different conversation. But we're starting to see, actually, even in the marketing space, that director communication roles are showing up at AI companies for multi six-figure salaries, almost seven-figure salaries. Mm-hmm. So there is a huge emphasis on quality and storytelling. We have to be better than AI. I think we're actually really uniquely positioned to be great at this because we're excellent storytellers and we're excellent with brand, and we have some of the best writers and creatives, I think, out there. So I think that the direct selling companies are uniquely positioned to win, but we have to really enable those super talented people who can actually achieve this better than AI, this human, and use AI to get us there. So the human in the loop is really key throughout the process. You're going to start implementing AI. There's going to be some friction of, oh, is this good enough? Is that not good enough? And that's where I always want to keep that last pass right now. I'm not really someone who's a big fan of saying go out with completely AI generated content. It's not my recommendation. There's certainly people who think that way and have been able to get results. But I think that last pass with a super, super smart, sharp writer and storyteller, sharp creative is really needed. And I think that if you don't do that, you risk losing trust because people are becoming more and more savvy with what is AI. And there's this instant loss of credibility when you're like, oh, well, this was low effort slop. Versus, oh, wow, they really understood me, or this cuts through the noise. So I think there's a huge challenge we have, but an opportunity as well that I think we're uniquely positioned to exceed.
Yeah, can you talk more about those guardrails around protecting quality, protecting brand voice and consistency, especially as you're developing communications and content and creative assets? What are some good guardrails to put in to help keep the brand strong and consistent?
Well, there's certainly guardrails that you're going to want to work with your legal and tech teams in terms of selecting the right tools. That's, I think, the first guardrail that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. Again, sometimes there's a bright and shiny, exciting tool that everyone wants to implement, but I'm sure if your IT team found out about it, they wouldn't be so happy. So make sure that you're using enterprise-ready tools. That's my first order of business when it comes to brand safety and company safety. The second really comes with shared resources, shared knowledge. And, whether that be RAG systems or, again, these enterprise companies, there was a tool like Writer that people use, or even within Zapier, you can upload your own knowledge bases and that can be shared across teams. We really want to go from individual chats with AI into being able to have a central hub of information. And then when it comes to guardrails, each individual agent that you're training, each individual task that you're training on, you have to have very, very detailed outlines of what great looks like, what's a no, examples. A lot of the times people are not using enough examples of what great looks like. And that probably should come from you because you have known what's performed really well before. So these are some of the ways that brands can be a little bit more safe. And then again, that human in the loop, that last pass, don't have something go out without your stamp of approval with that super critical mind at the end, that judgment, because AI can't do the strategy and can't do the judgment. So that's why first pass, last pass is kind of how I look at it. But you really want to get to the point where you're sharing across a team and not doing individual one-off things that are not connected back to each other. That's where I think it gets a little scary with brand.
Yeah, I agree. What about as it relates to the field and our distributors? As you mentioned, they are savvy, not just in detecting AI, but also in leveraging it now, often without guidance. So what risk does that create for brands today? It's much easier for us to keep control internally, working closely with legal and regulatory. But what about when the field is using it to rapidly scale and develop content and communications?
Yeah, and good AI that the field's done and not so good AI and non-compliant AI can scale at the same speed. So it's really around education. I think we have a responsibility to bring people along in the journey. We arm them with tools and marketing and all these great things that we've always done. Education around AI is a must. And I've done this with a lot of teams where I've come in and trained their fields about how to use the tools and how to understand what the tools are good at and what they're not good at. Because a lot of them are just going to ChatGPT and how do I make $1 million? How do I, they're not asking the right questions and they're not understanding how the tools work to actually help them. And we want to get them out of that functional freeze, but we want to do it in a brand safe way. And the only way that I've seen to do this, is either bring in a tool that you control and you have compliance checks on, or to educate the field. And it's not hard to do so. And they're really craving this information. And so many of them want this back and forth relationship. I've seen with pharmacy recently, they did a training. I've done a training with them as well. They were teaching the field how to use AI image creation. And then they were then sharing that when someone had done a really great job on their social. So there is this really great relationship if you arm the field with the tools and the understanding. But if you don't, you risk them being non-compliant. You risk them asking questions and wasting time. And ultimately, overwhelming them. They're overwhelmed too. If you think you're overwhelmed in corporate, imagine them sitting in their house trying to figure out how do I grow my business, asking the wrong questions to ChatGPT, or not knowing that they can use ChatGPT to help them write text messages, to help them write emails, to help them do their daily tasks so they can focus on what really makes the biggest difference, which is that human relationship aspect that makes our channel so different.
What does a successful education program look like? Is there a certain cadence now that it is becoming so widely leveraged and used and ubiquitous? Is there a right level? Is there a right cadence in educating the field? It can't just be something that we slip into the P&Ps with a few lines about how to use it or not use it, but how do we help bring them up to speed without, as you say, overwhelming them?
Yeah, I think I've done it quite a few different ways with different companies. And I love that you bring up cadence, because it's not just a train once and forget. As we just talked about, these tools change constantly. So we need to be making sure that we're keeping up with them as well. So I think there has to be a level of education across all distributors. They need to be able to access that information. That needs to be baseline. I think what's interesting is when you get people who are more involved in the business, they may have a level of sophistication or a level of willingness to invest in the next level, because you don't want to go out with a training program that's so sophisticated about video generation and image generation that is just not relevant to someone who's just trying to figure out how to pick up the phone to make their first sale. So you have to meet people where they're at in the business as well, and what tools are going to be right for them and how sophisticated they are. So the way that I've done it for a few different companies is, having that general education, making sure that that's an ongoing touch point, that there's AI education in every event that you're doing, or at least at your major key touch points. And then earned incentives or specific talks that are very relevant and customized to your company for your leadership levels, depending on where they're at. So it's not really just a one size fit all. You have to have that general education for the field at a basic level, but you also have this opportunity for your superstars who have the ability to go to that next level to provide that education to them as well.
I'm also curious about brand consistency from the corporate side, but also from the field side. When teams internally and in the field have the ability to create and generate such incredible content, how do we make sure that it's being deployed in a consistent way where, again, they could almost take the brand in any direction when they're using Midjourney or, some of these other incredible tools? How can we help keep things to some degree even consistent, moderately consistent?
It's such a good question. And I think that it's going to be an interesting one to continue to try to keep a lid on. I would argue that the field kind of has always had this ability, right? Whether or not they have AI tools or not, they certainly have changed logos and changed colors and
Sure.
when it comes to the creative aspect of the brand. But I think that the level of professionalism that we can achieve with these tools sometimes could be like, hey, what's actually coming from the corporate brand versus what's coming from a distributor. So it's an interesting time. Education and communication is the only way that I can see to fix this, and to have that back and forth, that communication, and to kind of set some guardrails and realize that they still have their own version of the brand. So we don't fully ever control, we do from a compliance standpoint and how our logo is used, but how they present the business, as long as it's within the confines of what is compliant, it's their own version of the brand. So it has to have this ongoing communication and this education, some guardrails. There's some tools that you can use for compliance and things like that. But I think it's gonna be a journey. I'm curious if you have the right answer to that too. I think it's always been a challenge, actually, ever since I've been in direct sales, which isn't, since 2019. But I think it's just always kind of a back and forth with the field on what is, no, that's too far. Okay, come back. This crosses a line. And now AI just kind of busts the gate wide open.
Yeah, it has always been a challenge. And I will say, for me, my take on it has changed significantly over the last several years. Early in my career as a CMO, I wanted that consistency. Here are the exact templates, and you can put your name in, and that's about it. And don't change anything. And these are the fonts, and just keeping really, really tight restrictions on what the distributors could do as they created their own content. And that's when the dynamic was we would bring them into our brand world and had great control around it. And now that everybody has followers and friends and family and their own brands and their influencers and affiliates, they're bringing us into their brand world now, and they're co-creating the brand with us. So I'm much more in the, hey, let's give them the assets they need and empower them and let them run with it. Because I think, as you just mentioned, the gates have been busted wide open. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
So do what you can to empower them, but understand their brands as well. They have audiences that they're pulling us in. And that gets to the brand monogamy as well, where we really have to be more open to our same brand partners and distributors representing and discussing multiple brands across channels, across business opportunities. And so, yeah, a lot of changes that we need to get used to, I think, on the corporate side. But
yeah,
I've shifted.
I did too. I did too. I was so resonate with your story, especially coming from like corporate brand luxury world. I was such a stickler. It used to drive me nuts. I would see people doing all crazy things on social media. But, we're kind of the original creator economy. And now people are falling in love with individual creators and joining their individual community. It's not necessarily just about the brand. It's how the brand lives through creators and lives through the field. So we do have to be comfortable with a certain level of change, and it's working. Even corporate companies, you've seen this trend where like employees have now become the creators for corporate companies. So we were kind of first at that. I think direct selling was the original creator economy, and so we just need to own it now.
Yeah, totally agree. Oh, I love this conversation. So as you're advising CMOs, and let's say some that are a little bit earlier in the AI adoption curve, what advice are you giving them on where to start? If they're looking in the next 90 days to make a meaningful impact, where is that starting point for them?
Start with your measurable business goals. Start with your strategy first, and then look at what you can implement and what you can measure. Pick one kind of, like we said, high volume, low impact to start, but really run a test case quickly, get some learnings, measure it, implement. Next one on the list, like go straight down your list. But sometimes we also get so excited by these novelty tools and exciting things, and we want to implement everything. Like, make sure that it's connected back to the measurable business goals, and it's something that you can actually say, did it work or did it not work? And don't just, okay, in the next 90 days, sure, start testing tools. You actually have to have a program that you set up, implement, test, learn, improve, iterate is the way that I like to start thinking about it. And it's pilot, measure, then scale, pilot, measure, then scale, pilot, measure, then scale, and improve, iterate. And that's the way we just need to constantly be thinking.
Yeah, it is completely iterative. And so I think we need to give our teams permission to be messy as they're learning and bringing these tools in, giving them the freedom to learn and adapt. And okay, great. Maybe this first use case wasn't great, but we can help tap it in the right direction. I'd rather have them experimenting and trying to learn and incorporate than being so rigid with it that they don't feel like they have the permission to make a mistake or be a little bit messy.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest. I can tell that you're a leader who creates a culture of innovation and psychological safety, but that's one of the biggest things that I try to coach leaders on, is that we have to really create the environment that we are in charge of how it's implemented. So having that safety to make a mistake, for it to not work out, is part of that process.
What do you see as one of the most common mistakes or landmines when it comes to AI and marketing transformation or adoption?
Excitement and emphasis on novelty and lack of attention and strategy. Shiny objects, fun tools, and I love it too. I'm constantly testing tools, but that's the first one, and probably the most important. It's not what's novel; it's what's actually going to make a big impact in your company and your team. And then the second, when it comes to leadership, is not getting in the game. Like, no one is exempt from this. I mean, even CEOs. I want CEOs to be playing. If you want your teams to learn Cloud Code, if you want your teams to be doing this type of level of innovation, you need to understand how it works. So we need to be in it with them, learning, adopting, adapting. The ownership is on us. And I've always been a leader who's felt like you walk with your teams, not in front of your teams. I'm always that mentality. But I think this is the time where no one is exempt when it comes to AI implementation, the future, any of our jobs. We really have to get with the program and get in the game.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm curious, outside of AI, as you're advising CEOs and CMOs, what are you telling them should be their top couple priorities that they need to be focusing on this next year outside of AI?
Customer attention and loyalty, always something that I think that we need to think about. Who are the people that we have? How do we love on them? How do we keep them? That's always something that's really important. And a big piece of that can be in your performance marketing. Certainly performance marketing as a whole, how you're going to make sure that the technology that you have is up to speed, your understanding, your attribution, your life cycle of your customers. This is a big piece that I think direct selling companies specifically need to put a big emphasis on. I'm also very excited about social commerce, readiness, and strategy. I think we're uniquely positioned to be great at that. We have an army of people who know how to present products and can sell it from their living room and on social. So I think we're already part of this space, and even more so are really positioned well to do great things in this space. So those are some of the things. And then the last is that storytelling and communication. Again, with this rise of AI slop, and we're going to need to rise above and really cut through the noise and be excellent storytellers and communicators.
So if you could leave direct selling executives listening to this conversation with one message, what do you feel that would be?
Get ready to change, and then get ready to change again.
Love it. That's great. As you look at the next 3 years, you just mentioned the social landscape that we're a part of. What excites you the most about that opportunity for us to take the leadership position?
I think we're already there. We already are there. We just have to figure out the platform piece. We really have to figure out how to play there. But we already have everyone trained. We already have the setup. We already have the products. It's there for us. I just think we just need to take it and own it. And I think when it comes to social, if people haven't even really caught up to the social piece, because there's certainly some legacy companies that don't have a very social savvy field, that's right there for you too. There's so many great examples of companies who've already gotten this right. You just really need to push people to get out there. And I think that that's where we're at. I think it's already there. I think we already own it if we just step up to the plate.
I agree. I always say we just need to command the space that we already occupy. And I think that's a perfect thought and idea to end on. Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing these insights with all of us. Where can people go to learn more about you, about the services you offer, or to contact you?
Yes, and thank you. I think this has been a really fun conversation. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kathleen Ross, and at KathleenRossCreative.com.
Thank you for tuning in. Please take a moment to subscribe and give a 5-star rating and review to help Direct Approach continue to provide more candid insights and interviews for direct selling corporate executives. And don't forget to register for our upcoming spring events at dsnevents.com. Secure your spot now. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.